Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me for today's webinar on You Won't Be Able to Scan Your Way Out of This, an introduction to web forms and the future of capture. My name is Laura Froyam. I'm an account executive here at CDI, and I'm happy to join you all today. Couple of housekeeping items. Everybody is going to be on mute for the duration of this webinar, but I encourage you to post your questions in the question box as they come up. I will be monitoring the questions box and I'll go through it at the end and address anything that comes up. Something else I want to point out today is we've got a couple of handouts in the GoTo webinar pane. So I called that out here, and I highly recommend downloading these for your future reference. The Laserfiche Getting Started guides are one of my favorite resources if you're new to certain modules of Laserfiche. So I posted the forms one in there today, and I definitely recommend it. Also, since today's session is going to be all about Laserfiche forms and the future of capture, I recommend that as we are going through the webinar, if you get ideas or if there are processes that your team is using currently, feel free to post it in the questions box again, and I'll read them aloud because I want this again to be really informative for everyone. And it's all about, generating ideas and letting you know how you can leverage your Laserfiche system. So additionally, the webinar is going to be recorded and it will be available on our YouTube site, within the coming days. So if you don't get to stay for the whole thing, never fear, you'll be able to rewatch it later. So today's agenda, we are going to go through an introduction to Laserfiche forms. We're going to walk through the interface so you can see, what each version of Laserfiche Forms Cloud versus Forms self-hosted kind of looks like. I've got a bunch of different real life examples and ideas to talk through. And then we're going to jump into a few live demonstrations of some processes in action so you can get a really good feel for how Laserfiche Forms works. And then we're going to go through a bunch of different resources that are available either through the CDI team or Laserfiche directly. So for those of you who are newer to Laserfiche or new to Laserfiche Forms, Laserfiche Forms is essentially an electronic form submission system, allowing you to digitally capture, route, approve forms for both internal and external use. So what is meant by that is you can create a form. Think about a fillable form that you're filling out. When you go to the doctor's office, they have you fill out forms. When you're going to a new advisory firm, to get some financial advice, you're filling out forms on your goals, things like that. So any forms that you fill out, paper-based right now, or that are PDF fillable forms, you can convert them to a Laserfiche web form. So it's just allowing you to create fields of information and, fill out that form and kick off automation processes. So Laserfiche web forms can be used in conjunction with the workflow engine to allow you to route things, pull from external databases, classify, archive, anything you might need to do with a paper document once it's received, and then all the way through archiving it, for compliance in your Laserfiche system. So let's take a look at the forms interfaces. So when you're navigating to Laserfiche Forms, as long as if you have a self-hosted version of Laserfiche, whether that's United, Avante, or Rio, or subscription-based, as long as you have workflow on your Laserfiche deployment or licensing, then you have some version of Laserfiche Forms. And so to get to Laserfiche Forms, you would have to navigate to your Laserfiche web server, and then you could log into Forms from there. And so when you log into the self-hosted version of Forms, this is what it looks like. The cloud version and the self-hosted version are very similar. This is Laserfiche 10.4, so if yours looks a little bit different, that's just the version that I'm on. So this is the self-hosted version of Forms. It allows you to, or brings you directly to your inbox, so you can do task management, you can start processes, view reporting, design, all of that within here. I'm going to go into those a little bit more detailed in the cloud environment instead of our production environment. So if you are using Laserfiche Cloud to navigate to Forms, you would actually click your 9 squares button up here and then go to Business Process Automation or Business Processes. And then that would bring you to your Forms area within the cloud. So as you can see, the interfaces are very similar. Just that dark blue color is mainly the only difference that we kind of see here. So when we're looking at the different tabs in Laserfiche Forms, the Manage tab is what allows you to view all of the different forms processes that you have set up within your environment. So you can go in here, you can click on one and manage it, update it, all that kind of things. If it exists already, it's in the Manage tab, if you have permissions to see it. If we jump into the Design tab, this is where you would be able to design your own or new Laserfiche Forms processes. So again, both cloud and self-hosted gives you the ability to take advantage of solution templates. And solution templates in Laserfiche Forms are pre-configured processes that you can add to your system really easily. Any of these pre-configured processes can also be further customized once they're downloaded onto your system. So you're not locked into, this specific invoice review and payment, process. You can customize it to your own team and organizational needs. So you can design, update here. If we go into the Monitor tab, this is what allows you to view the different Forms instances that you have pre-configured, and anything having to do with a specific instance, which is the process overall, or you can go in and view a specific task as part of a process. So if we take a look, we're going to go in and take a look at this accounts payable process. So I'm just going to click search. This is going to give me all of the different instances of that process that has been run. Anything in blue is a clickable link, so you can go ahead and select it, and then it will bring you deeper into the process. Otherwise, if we want to review specific tasks, again, I'm going to go to accounts payable, run a search. These are all of the different tasks that were associated with any of those instances, with all of the versions, in I don't think there is a specific time frame assigned, so they're just all of them, and you can see who it was assigned to, when it was completed, and of course you can click into anything in blue, and dig in further. So then you can also do reporting. Laserfiche Forms does a really great job at allowing you to be able to build reports not only on like performance, so how long it's taking users to complete tasks, but you can also view the instances in progress, take a look at task loads or workloads. Let's dig into a workload. Something that we hear pretty frequently at CDI is, when we're going into building a new forms process, people are always asking, how can I see what my users are doing and what is assigned out? If we talk about permitting or, compliance reviews or, whatever the process may be, how can I see who's doing what? How do I get that transparency? So if I go in here, we're going to use accounts payable again. This year to date, we can go ahead and click apply, and we can see the workload for staff. And so, if we were building out a process that was assigned to a team of people, we can see that Laura is creating way more tasks, creating and completing way more tasks than Fernando. And so you can see what's in progress, what's completed, and of course you can click on it and get more information. And again, anything in blue you can drill down into. And so you can get workload types of reporting that way. And there are additional customizations that we'll go through and take a look at as part of this process or as part of this webinar as we keep going. So minimize that, and we're going to jump in back to the PowerPoint. Sorry, it is apparently my first day running a PowerPoint. So let's talk about some ideas. This is a list actually of a lot of the business processes that exist in the business process library, which I had mentioned. So again, these are pre-configured automation forms and workflows that you can just plop into your system and take advantage of. So a couple of the ones that I want to highlight, we see a lot of invoice review and routing. So, your department scans in an invoice, or they drag and drop it from an email to kick off an invoice review process, and then it routes to and from, users. Employee evaluation. So, every year you have to evaluate your employees. You can build that into a Laserfiche form where maybe it kicks off a reminder to the supervisor, letting them know, hey, this person's due for their review. Click here in the email and that will open up a task that will bring you to the review form. Expense reimbursements, travel reimbursements, anything really having to do with HR, benefits and insurance enrollment. Every year you have to do, some organizations have to do engagement. And so you can have a form task sent out, hey, are you agreeing to our standard terms? Things like that. You can incorporate that. New account openings, pet licenses, special events. We've actually had a few municipalities create parade signups through Laserfiche forms. And so if you go onto their website, you're interested in having a float in the parade, they have you fill out a Laserfiche form, and then that goes back to their team to make sure there's enough space and, provides you whatever other email documentation from there. So just some ideas. And then these next few slides are real life examples, on how other organizations, whether they're CDI clients or, just other organizations that are using Laserfiche forms and how they have it configured. So again, anything having to do with HR. So the job application, job requisition, the onboarding, anything that you have that maybe has tasks associated. So you need to remind users that, hey, you have something you need to do, take action, and you want to be able to track that. You can do that all within forms. So you can create a form to collect the information. Once it's collected, it kicks off a task list to another user. A burn permit. We've got lots of municipalities that do burn permits through Laserfiche forms. So again, this is something that is available on their website. You either click the link or you can embed it directly into your website and request a burn permit. Operator and bartenders licenses. Any type of business licensing, that you might have to do, whether it's a business license, a liquor license, a pet license, any of those types of licensing things where you're collecting information from a citizen and needing to take action on it, you can convert and, build in Laserfiche forms and route it and archive it all within your Laserfiche system. You can even collect payments through Laserfiche forms. So if you have a module called the Forms Portal, which allows you to make your forms publicly accessible, not just for internal use, but publicly accessible to unlicensed Laserfiche users, you can collect payments if you wanted. And we'll take a look at that when we do a live demo here later. Student enrollment. This is a school district that is doing student enrollment. So again, if you've got a new student in the area or a family has just moved in and you want to get them enrolled in the district, where do you start? You go to their website and you have to fill out a form. It used to be paper-based, but now it's all done through Laserfiche forms and everything is tracked and routed. And we can even potentially integrate it with some of your other applications like your student information system. We can integrate with CRMs to help push and pull information to streamline your processes. Election judge. So if you, again, are a municipality, you have to do election judge enrollment. You could create a Laserfiche form for that, where you can select, which election you are signing up for and that you want to be a judge for, and you fill out that information. And then from there, once it's submitted, it goes back to the municipality team and they go ahead, approve, and then once approved, it sends out an email to that citizen letting them know they've been approved and here's your registration information. Data gathering forms. So again, this is for a financial firm. They sit down with all of their new clients and they gather data on their background, their history, their assets, all that good stuff, and they just fill this out in advance so that when they have that one-on-one meeting with their client, the firm has all of the information that they need to keep things moving and keep processes going. And then everything, again, once it's submitted through Laserfiche, it goes, or through Laserfiche forms, it goes in and stores in the repository. So everything is accessible and stored and, archived according to their best practices. So a data gathering form, also an investment questionnaire. So allowing them to collect information on, what their current investments are and things like that. Timesheets. This is a school district that's doing, timesheets within Laserfiche. So if you have certificated employees or, hourly employees that you have to collect timesheets for, or maybe seasonal employees, things like that, you can have them fill out a Laserfiche form. And then that could go to their manager for approval or sign off. And then from there, it goes to, finance or payroll to process. COVID relief. So this is, I can't remember who did this one exactly, but if you have to send out notifications for COVID, saying, hey, we have COVID, and you need to track that, something like that. Hopefully COVID is, kind of going away, but again, just another example of how you could use a Laserfiche form. This is actually an emergency assistance. So if you need assistance because you were out of work because of COVID, something like that, you can fill out a Laserfiche form, and get approval and go through the ropes that way. Patient intake form. So again, these are all just examples, live forms that people are using currently. So patient intake form, they're new to you, client onboarding, vendor onboarding, all of those, when you're collecting information and then pushing that into your Laserfiche repository to start whatever process you want, just examples. Voter registration. So again, municipality, you have somebody new moved into the neighborhood or your city or county, and you need to do voter registration. They can go ahead and fill out a Laserfiche form, and you can incorporate it into your processes that way. Meeting prep guide. So again, if you're meeting with clients on a regular basis, this is just another example of what you can fill out, a Laserfiche form. A lot of these forms, I didn't point it out specifically, but they've got tabs at the top because they have lots of information that they want to collect. And this is kind of by adding tabs, it's a nice way to separate the information depending on what it is. So again, and all the colors and the logos, I blacked out all the logos on all of these, but you can certainly color these however you want in whatever way. CDI, we use forms for everything. So every time we meet with a customer, we fill out these appointment recaps. Our consulting team has their own kind of version of this, but this is what the sales team uses. And all of these fields are drop downs connected to our CRM or to a database. So again, we can connect to CRMs, we can connect to like GIS programs, we can potentially connect to your finance software, other applications where you are collecting or pulling information on whatever your processes are. We could potentially incorporate that into your Laserfiche forms process so that you don't have to key in that information. We just pull from a live drop-down list to help you keep things organized and standardized. This is another one. Oh, this is a good example. So it's a really quick form adding a new contractor, employee, or vendor. So this organization has a SQL table that they leverage for, populating other processes. And so they just have this simple form where they type in a couple of fields of information and that updates a SQL table so that that information can then be used, in any other process that they could ever imagine. All right, so let's take a look at some demos now. Hopefully you got some good ideas from that. We are going to start with building inspections. So this again is just one example. We've got the building ID, so if you happen to know that, or maybe you have this connected with a database and they just type in the address. From there, it could do a database lookup. Oh my goodness. You can make certain fields of information required so that you're always getting the minimal amount of information you need. You can select who you want to assign this to. You can include attachments. So let me just do escape on that. I'm just going to drag and drop something from my desktop to attach. And so again, any forms, if you build them, you can have the ability to upload attachments to those to bring that information into your Laserfiche repository. So I'm going to go ahead and click submit. So this is if, again, we're doing a building inspection or we're requesting one. We put up a new fence and I need to have the city come out here and make sure I did a good job. So if I come back into my cloud environment, I can see I get a little notification. A building inspection task was assigned to me. And now I can see this task. And again, you can see here that this form is set up a little bit different than that initial submission. So I can have this configured however I want based on the information that was filled out in that initial form. So doing surface drainage, everything looks good. If I was out and about, I could fill this out on my mobile device so I can take pictures, while I'm doing my inspection and submit it. Is there any maintenance required? No. Does everything look good? You can incorporate electronic signatures into your forms. So an electronic signature is if you have a user that is filling this out that is a Laserfiche user and they're authenticated into the system with either a Laserfiche full user license or a participant user license, you have an audit trail to track who's doing what to make this a legally binding signature. But if you are just having your citizens verify, hey, I've typed in all of my information, it's not necessarily a legally binding signature. So it kind of depends on what you need and what your requirements are as far as signatures, but this is one type of signature. So we're going to go ahead and submit this. And then from there, what happens is it just archives it into the Laserfiche repository. And again, it can kick off some other process, letting the team know the inspection was complete and all of that. So let's take a look at another process. Got one for child support services here. This is just another example of a form, and again, you wouldn't be locked into anything specifically, but just kind of giving you an idea of what's out there. So parent application for child support services. I'm just going to use my name. Oh my gosh. For everything today. I am the mother. We've got radio buttons, check boxes. Do I need an interpreter? No. If I click yes, we can see here that a new box popped up. So these forms can be dynamic as it gets filled out to give new information and show additional information as you go. collect additional information. So I'm just going to type in my email here. And you can see this little star indicates a required field. You can have, helpful tips. So you can have text above or below the field, or I don't know if this form has one. Oh, it's got this little question mark, so you can hover over it and get a little, paycheck amount before taxes. Okay, that's what gross means. Give you helpful tips and tricks as you are going through. So I'm just going to go ahead, sign this, and submit it. So from there, I'm going to get a task assignment again. So if I go into my tasks, we can see that I've got an online application we need to take action on. I can look everything over. I can add my application information. And then go ahead and approve or reject. And then from there, it just stores a copy of that form in Laserfiche. So I'm going to open up my repository and we'll take a look. So here we have it just set up in a record series, completed today. And then if we just take a preview of that form, we can see this is what a submission looks like without any customizations to it, really. So if you have an approval process that's getting routed through Laserfiche, you can have that action history stored with your form. So you can see who did what and when at any point. And then we've got a version of that form here for us to take a look at. And it's just stored in the record series. So if I went there, I could take a look at what the filing date was and any cutoff instructions that were assigned to the document. So let's take a look at another example, business license example. So this one will do a few cool things that we'll take a look at. Moratorium. Laserfiche rules. Yes. Is the mailing address the same? Yes. Or if I say no, again, my form is dynamically changing with me. If you are using Laserfiche to complete a series of forms that may have been PDF fillable forms and you maybe have multiple tabs, and so you're requesting the email in multiple spots, you can essentially build out automation kind of behind the scenes that once they fill out the email in one spot, it automatically updates it in all of those email fields in the forms so that you don't have to require them to type in the same thing over and over. So you have options. I'm going to do a retail business for nails. We're an LLC. Laura. And submit. So then if we go into our forms area, we can go to unassigned tasks because this business license application actually gets assigned to a team of people. And so if there's a team of people, there's more than one person, and so the system just puts it in this unassigned task area and then emails the people in the team. And so they can go ahead and open their email. And then they could get a link to this task, and then they would be able to open up the task and assign it to themselves. And so that's what it looks like if you have a team task. It goes into an unassigned area, they assign it to themselves, and then they have it in their box and they can take action. See, we've got a fee here associated. And again, you have the ability to customize what this task list, consists of as part of this initial approval when the license comes back. So maybe it goes to the clerk or, whoever, and you can go ahead and say approve. And then it's going to archive that in our Laserfiche system. So if I jump back to my repository, business licenses. So we can see here, Laserfiche created a new folder for that business called Laserfiche Rules. And we can see a few documents are in here. So if we take a look at this PDF document and do the preview, this is that form submission. Again, we've got that action history on who did what and what that original submission is. And then we can take a look at this business license. So Laserfiche took that information that was filled out in the form and it created a business license for us that we could then send off to the printers to have formally printed or printed off and mail it out, whatever you need to do. But essentially, you don't have to go ahead and recreate that business license. Laserfiche Forms and Workflow is essentially creating content for you. And then it also generated an invoice. So we can see here an invoice from CDI for this business license went out to Laura Froyam. And if I jump into my email, we can take a look at what that looks like. So then your citizen or your client or your student or parent, maybe they get an email, or your member, they get an email. You can customize what that looks like. Hey, Laura Froyam, your business license invoice is attached. You can pay online or click here. So if we click here, it's going to bring us to, again, a Laserfiche form that's going to allow us to collect this payment. I'm going to pay check by mail. And then it gives you the billing information if I were to switch it to credit or debit card. The integration with the forms payment works with authorize.net or Braintree. There are other merchant providers that we can and have integrated with. And so if you are curious about processing payments through Laserfiche Forms and you want to see if it will work for you, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll help you get that sorted out. And then even PayPal. So I'm just going to do mail it and then submit. And then there you go. Maybe the finance team gets notification that payment's been received so that they can go ahead and take action. If I click refresh here, we'll see that the proof of payment came through. Or if it's a check, maybe a task is created for somebody to say, hey, make sure we receive this check. And then once they say it's been received, then the business license gets mailed out. You've got a number of options for configuring that. So let's take a look at one more process here. And if you are and have been to my webinars before, chances are you've probably seen this one, but the contract management demo. So we're going to kick off a new process. If we're lucky, there we go. Laura, So what this form is kind of going through again is it's being used internally for staff to onboard essentially kind of a new vendor and kick off a contract review process. So professional services for professional services. This contract type, this drop down here is indicating which contract template essentially that we're going to use on the back end. So once this form is submitted, it's going to kick off the multiple approvals, but it's going to create that standardized Word document template that is then going to get routed around for everybody to review. We're just going to do professional services. We'll do an existing vendor. For the Giggle Factory. SIC code. Again, just Laserfiche dynamically updating. So as I select a drop down, it's updating my industry. And this is a pull-in from a live website, actually. So this connection is a live website for government entities for SIC codes. We're going to select an expiration date, 2023. When you're doing contract processes, you a lot of times have certain addendums that you need to include, and addendums can vary based on the type of contract it is. And so it's really easy to include those addendums in your standardized template just by clicking a checkbox. Because again, once this is submitted, it's going to create that standardized contract for us. And you can upload attachments if we want. We could save it as a draft so we can come back to it later. This is a newer feature to Laserfiche forms, where if you're on an older version, I can't remember which version it came out on, but save as draft hasn't always been there. But it's really great if, again, you are doing client onboarding for, financial firms, and they have to go collect all of this paperwork and documentation and submit it to you. They can go ahead and save it as a draft and then get an email with a link to continue their submission as they find documentation. So we're going to go ahead and just click submit, and then this is going to kick off the approval processes. And then this process is also integrated with DocuSign. So it's going to send out a DocuSign envelope for us to sign, and then once it's gone through all of the approvals, and then archive everything to the Laserfiche repository. So I can view the contract folder or the document. We can see this is just kind of an updated task from what that original submission was. A lot of it is read-only, so I can't make changes to it. I can just look at it. I'm going to say draft updated. It's going to move from legal to legal review 1. So again, this is just an example of Laserfiche going through multiple approval steps. So you can set that up however you want. It can route to certain people based on certain things, so like dollar amount or territory or their address, whatever it is. If you want to do some sort of filtering criteria on it in Laserfiche to route it to the appropriate person within your organization, you can set that up with workflow. Manager approved. So from here, it's gone through all of the approvals on our side. It's just going to dump me back to my task box. And then if I jump into my email, we have received a DocuSign envelope notification, so I can go ahead and review it. So Laserfiche can integrate with DocuSign, Signex, OneSpan, PandaDocs. I think I'm forgetting one. So that you can seamlessly route your processes for signature. So I'm going to agree, continue, adopt and sign, finish. Now, since this is a contract, we actually have to get another signature. So if I pull up that other envelope. I'm agreeing to sign. So here I'm going to initial. I see the requirements. Sign. We can see this other signature from Patrick is already there since he signed first. You have the ability to set your signing order as part of your process. The integration with DocuSign is probably the most robust out of all of the digital signatures because it has the most flexibility. You can send a document from Laserfiche, have it pulled back into the repository, or you can kick off the process from within DocuSign and have it pull into the repository. So there's lots of options there. So we finished signing. And then what that does is it creates everything in our repository for us. So if I jump back in to our contracts area, web client, so here when the contract came in, it originally went into contracts in process. We can see here Giggle Factory Professional Services, the contract we just kicked off today. We've got our unsigned Word document as well as that original contract request. So if we go ahead and do the preview, we can see what that looks like. We could take a look at the Word document as a preview, the unsigned version. We'll be able to see here anything in this kind of orangey red color came in as these were the fillable fields that were populated based on that form submission. Anything in black is part of our standardized template. Here was that addendum for insurance, if you needed to add that in. And then we've got a refresh notification. So if I click refresh, we'll be able to see we've got some new documents added in here. I can go ahead and take a look at this PDF, which is the signed version that got pulled back into our repository. We've got that envelope ID information. You can also integrate a tab in Web Access with DocuSign. And so what this essentially does is it allows you to see all of that envelope history as part of a web tab instead of having to log into DocuSign to find all of that information. And then you can also have the certificate of completion pulled in instead. So if you wanted to have it pulled in instead of having a web tab or having to worry about staying connected to DocuSign, you can have that pulled in. Additionally, with forms, you can not only do that reporting, which we talked about earlier, but you can also create forms to essentially report information to you real time. And so here is just an example of that. This is all of our active contracts in our repository being pulled in a nice handy view. So I can see, when the contract review date is due. So Laserfiche is doing calculations behind the scenes so that it will send me an email notification along these dates to let me know, hey, take action on this before it expires. And then you can do a comparison and click here to go directly to that folder. Other organizations that we work with also have built in custom sorting here at the top. So you could sort for contracts by a specific department or within a certain budget amount or approved by a specific individual. And so you can customize that really however you want. So that's just kind of one example. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. Whoop. And talk through some of the resources. So start out some of the CDI resources. These are, and I tried to include the web URL if it existed so that you could easily find it on your own again later. As a reminder, in the handouts area of the webinar, I did include a couple of really great resources for you. So the CDI resources brochure, which you can download, it's got all of these links included on it. As well as the Getting Started with Laserfiche Forms guide, which I highly recommend. So I just kind of want to walk through a couple of these. So let me pull over my web page. So this is just the CDI website, cdi.support. And if you go into resources, you can see brochures for integrations, and then you could click here to view our upcoming webinars or any of our newsletters or sign up for our newsletter, and then also access our video library. So our customer portal is great if you are a client of ours so that you can log into the customer portal from our website. So you just click here to go to the portal, get logged in. And then if you go to our events tab, you can see all of the upcoming events that we have. We try and stay really on top of this. So you can see we've got a bunch of our training Tuesdays on here, which are free. So you can register for workflow training coming up on 7/5. Here's today's webinar. Next month we have OSE Can You See Stars and Tags in Laserfiche, so you can learn a little bit more about favoriting things as well as tagging things, either security or informationally based things, and then sign up for those webinars and then see other events that we've got going on. And then we've also got our YouTube channel. So again, if you're interested in seeing other forms examples, I want to see HR, you can just type in HR and get a whole list of webinars that we've done on HR automation. So you can see what other organizations are doing and get some good ideas or do a build along, all of that. So those are some of the CDI resources available. Of course, we do have our consulting team. So if you have any questions or you want to spec out a process or you're not sure if you have forms or how to get it or you just need help, definitely reach out to sales@citiesdigital.com and we'll help you. These are also some of the Laserfiche resources that I think are really good. So Laserfiche has their solution exchange, recently renamed to the solution blog, where you can go and see, again, real life examples for what other organizations are doing with their Laserfiche system. So if I jump back up here, we've got the solution blog. Confederated Tribes of Coos, they're COVID-19, so I did include that screenshot in there. There's a ton of other ones. So if you wanted to see finance, you could search on finance, and then it's going to give you all of the different results for finance. And then you can go ahead and read more from there. Laserfiche also has a solution marketplace, which is similar to the business process library. This is newer to Laserfiche. But essentially within this solution marketplace, you can search for pre-configured processes again. So things that people have done in the past that have been shared with the Laserfiche community. You can take a look and see all of the different categories and sort and find processes and then figure out whether or not you want to download it to your system or not. And then again, one of my favorite resources is the Getting Started guides. If you're new to certain modules of Laserfiche, these are so helpful. They're PDFs with the videos embedded as well as links to helpful resources and other guides. And so I strongly recommend really downloading all of these and sharing them with your friends because they're pretty great. The Getting Started guide for forms is what I included in the handouts, so make sure you go ahead and download that. But then Laserfiche Answers is another really good resource. So, if you want to ask the Laserfiche community a question about have you done this or, have you integrated with that or, whatever it may be, you can communicate with the Laserfiche community through Laserfiche Answers. All right, so now I'm going to open it up to questions. I hope everybody took the opportunity to put some ideas in there, as well as questions. So I'm going to kind of go through. For external forms, is it possible to secure the submission of confidential information? Yes. So you can collect whatever information you want in an externally facing forms from Laserfiche, and then it will go back directly to your team and database. And I feel like if you need a more technical answer than that, I can certainly reach out and have the support team reach out. But yes, you can essentially collect whatever information you want in the Laserfiche form, and it goes directly back to your team. Something I want to also point out is if you are using publicly facing forms to collect attachments, something you might want to consider is we have an integration called the Laserfiche Forms Portal Virus Scan, which will essentially scan any attached documents for viruses or malicious information prior to it going into your Laserfiche database and potentially causing corruption. So that's something you might want to consider, if you're worried about collecting attachments and securing that information. So next question, are you able to connect directly to a CRM, or does it have to be a local database table? That's a great question, and from what I understand, there has to be an in-between table, essentially, that we can push and pull from. So a SQL table or database that will collect the information that's getting synchronized with the CRM to populate the table, and then we can push and pull from there. So then we have a question about this has been a problem for us if they leave it open too long. So I assume it's a user is trying to fill out a form and they take a long time to fill it out, so the form times out. You can customize how long you set your form's timeout to be, but sometimes that can still be a little bit finicky. And so you can encourage users to save as a draft, like have that, once they fill out one tab before they click submit, instead of clicking submit, it clicks save as draft. And so it saves their work, kind of as they go. I do know that there was a recent client we had been working with who was having a similar problem, and the team had came up with a solution that essentially forces a save as draft. So we're not relying on the, client or citizen to save it as a draft and making sure that they don't lose their work. It essentially forces a pop-up, so says save as draft, so that their information doesn't get lost. Right. So I am a little sad nobody had any Laserfiche forms ideas to share with the group in the questions chat. But hopefully, throughout this webinar, you got some ideas on how your organization could use Laserfiche forms. And if you have an idea, but you're not quite sure it will work, definitely please reach out to your Laserfiche account rep or sales at cdi.support, and we can talk through what you're thinking and help you spec it out. I did have we had a forms suggestion roll in, an account QC form. So checking whether or not documents are in good order or not in good order, and routing it for compliance review. So that's a good one. Thank you for sharing. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody joining today's webinar. Again, don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. Our team is here to help. Hopefully you got some good information, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much.